Mondays here at Chapel at Concordia this year. We're calling Illumination Mondays, and this is actually one of the volumes of travel copies of St. John's Bible with the Illumination today of Transfiguration. Peter, James, and John, and Jesus on the mountain, and Moses and Elijah appear. You'll hear about that in a little bit. And I always pray, because when it's sunny in here, you can't see very well. So I pray for clouds on Illumination Monday. Today, and we've invited all kinds of faculty and staff to share on Mondays. Today, Teresa Fitzpatrick, who is on the piano right now, will share a word. She is a professor of English and helps in the Writing Center, and we're anxious to hear from her today. Also, we have Pastor Eggold from the seminary in St. Louis. You might wave your hand. Anybody interested in going to the seminary? If you have a friend who's interested in going to the seminary, if you want to play a trick on your friend and make an appointment with them, send your friends to meet with Pastor Eggold about pastoral ministry at St. Louis Seminary. So thank you for being with us. And you'll be here today and tomorrow.
Yes, at the north end of the town.
Okay, yeah, great. All right, God bless you. We're going to begin with the song. And welcome to campus, God. Blessings today.
Mark chapter 9, the story of Transfiguration, starting at verse 2. After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John with him and led them up a high mountain, where they were all alone. There he was transfigured before them. His clothes became dazzling white, whiter than anyone in the world could bleach them. And there appeared before them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He didn't know what to say. They were so frightened. Then a cloud appeared and enveloped them, and a voice came from the cloud. "This is my son whom I love. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they no longer saw anyone with them except Jesus.
Morning, everybody. Morning. I teach English. In fact, some of my former students and current students are here today. So I should start off my talk this morning with an etymological study of the word transfiguration. Sounds fascinating, doesn't it? From the Latin trans, meaning across, beyond, or through, and figura, meaning emblem or type. The first recorded use was in the 13th century Middle English translation of this very biblical text, and the church celebration which commemorates it, Transfiguration. It is most often, though not always, used in the context of a divine revelation, a glorification, or a spiritual change. I teach English, so I should move next to a close reading of the text. That's what we do. Or maybe even bring up an unusual anecdote that only someone who reads dusty old books all the time can muster up. For example, in Mark's Gospel, here, Christ's clothes become dazzling white. While in Matthew's Gospel, his face also shone like the sun. In a related, if not parallel, Old Testament story, Moses sees the Lord face to face on Mount Sinai, receives the 10 Commandments, and descends from the mountain with his face radiant. Only the word keren in Hebrew can mean either radiated light or grew horns. And this passage was mistranslated by St. Jerome in the late 4th century to say the latter. This snafu led to a ridiculous amount of great art and literature portraying Moses as the dude with horns. I am not making this up. I guess the Greek was a lot easier to translate, however, for there is no such mix-up when it comes to this story. As shown so beautifully in this rendition, Jesus is quite hornless and exudes a kingly glow, priestly vestments, a crown of light, and illumination itself. But besides being an English teacher, I am also a mother. So I should focus on the words beloved and son, and how those words alone are transformational. Both physically, in that becoming a mother twisted and pulled and turned my body inside out in ways I didn't think a woman could survive, and spiritually, in that I now feel every day as if my heart lives outside of my body, intense and exposed and ready to burst open. But besides being a mother, I am also a daughter. So I should focus not only on the flow of the Father's blessing here, but also on the great line of succession that is made clear by the presence of Moses and Elijah. No one, not even Jesus himself, exists without a path paved by those who came before. There is a respect for that made manifest in the authoritative voice of God and the quiet conversation between these 3 figures. Elijah with hands outstretched, and Moses shown carrying the 2 tablets of the law. As in medieval and Renaissance art, religious figures often hold a symbol of their identity. Additionally, even though the silver words listen to him, you can barely see them up there. They basically fade right on into the painting. I think that the extremely rare moment here when the father tells everyone around to shut up and listen to his kid is pretty impressive and worth noting. In my experience, that's not usually how things play out. And besides being a daughter, I am also a friend. So I should focus on the other characters present in this account, on the word terrified, and on the fact that Peter keeps asking stupid questions, assuming Elijah and and Moses, standing firmly on the ground, are in some way equal to Christ, assuming that every moment is easily defined and every person summed up in a nice little category. I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that none of us have best friends who've undergone a divine transfiguration in front of our faces. Clearly, our human experiences merely and dimly reflect divine moments, but this does not mean that we cannot relate to Peter. For if you have not yet experienced that humbling moment, when you realize that you have entirely misunderstood or underestimated a close, dear friend, just wait. It's coming. And that's when friendships really start to get real. However, teacher, mother, daughter, friend, those are not the only things I am, not by a long shot. I am also a coffee drinker, and a vegetarian, and a consumer of large quantities of dark chocolate and pistachios. I am a lover of murder mysteries and trivia and running and climbing on big rocks. I am an knower of student loans, and a fearer of bees, and a bad speller, and a graduate student. And tomorrow, who knows? I might not be any of these things. I used to be a church music director, a bank teller, a barista, a marathon runner, a folk singer, a sister, a wife, a Bon Jovi fan, a pregnant woman, a world traveler, a mud pie connoisseur, a tree climber, an ice skater, a bagel lover, a Bostonian, Kentuckian, Ohioan, Pennsylvanian, and a Californian. I used to never go outside in the sun. I used to never wear swimming suits. Just last week, I was a user of one kind of smartphone, and now I'm a user of a different kind of smartphone. I used to wear black lipstick and slips as clothing. I used to dye my hair crazy colors and wear crazy shoes. For about 2 seconds, I was both a vegan and a teetotaler. Heck, I even voted Republican once. Ralph Waldo Emerson once famously wrote in his essay, Self-Reliance, that a foolish consistency is a hobgoblin of little minds, adored by little statesmen and philosophers and divines. With consistency, a great soul has simply nothing to do. He may as well concern himself with his shadow on the wall. Out upon your guarded lips, sew them up with path-thread dew. Else, if you would be human, speak what you think today in words as hard as cannonballs. And tomorrow, think in hard words again, though it contradict everything you say today. Every moment is a transfiguration of either divine or merely human importance. And the second that ceases, we are either dead or just plain boring. Moving beyond or through our former figure can be as frightening and as painful as death, an injury, or a divorce, or as benign as getting your hair cut. But the point is that we are never who we once were. We are here and now, in this one snapshot of time, amidst the golden ghost of calm and stars, calling us beloved, calling us kids.
Let's rise in prayer. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you that you have called us beloved, that you have called us your daughters and your sons, that we know, even in the midst of our brokenness, in the midst of who we were and are in sin, that the blood, the death, and resurrection of your Son Jesus for each of us has changed us forever. That we would be made right with you through his sacrifice and resurrection, and we praise you for that. That we aren't who we used to be, and we aren't yet what you will perfect us to be, but we rest in your grace and in your love. Father, this morning we remember in our prayers of Grace Lutheran Church in Brooklyn Park that just is coping with the loss of their pastor. Lord, we ask that you would grant peace and grace for the people that are going through this difficult season, that you would bless family and friends that grieve. Father, this morning we also come to you with heavy hearts, hearing about the persecuted church around the world, hearing about terrorism that shakes us to our very core. And we plead for you to intercede, that you would act with grace and mercy, that you would have mercy on our broken world, that you would bring about peace, peace that only comes through your Son, Jesus. It's these prayers and the prayers of our hearts we entrust to your loving hands this morning. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Just want to remind you that this week Lent begins, so we will have Ash Wednesday services on Wednesday morning, and our Lenten series, I Am, will begin on Thursday morning. So be sure to join us for those. Go in peace, serve the Lord.